Hey Center Valley, this week I want to discuss with you a topic that's really important, and that topic is why the 30 days prior to listing your house on the market are extremely important for sellers. A lot of times, this window of time before the house goes live gets overlooked, and sellers think that the process begins when that sign goes out in the front yard. But the truth is that the 30 days before the house goes on the market are really crucial for having a successful outcome for the sale of your house. So I have some notes here that I'm going to go over with you. And the first thing that I want to talk about is that selling is a process, not an event. The sale of your house is not just an event that takes place. It's not just, oh, let's put a sign in the yard and then the house sells and that's it. It is a process. And that process starts well before, many weeks before the for sale sign goes up in the yard. And we're going to get into detail on exactly what that means and what that looks like. But the important takeaway, selling is a process, not an event. Now, one of the most important periods of time before listing your house is before you call an agent. Before you ever pick up that phone, that is a really crucial window of time, because the questions you're going to be asking yourself are renovations. What do I need to do to my house? Do I need to do any updates? Do I need to do any repairs? Timing. Is now the right time to sell? Should I wait a month? Should I wait a week? Should I wait 6 months? These are questions that are going through sellers' heads before they ever list the house for sale. And also research. So not only are you researching to get familiar with different local agents in the area that will be able to assist you, but you're also researching other properties throughout the neighborhood and throughout the community and what those houses look like, what they sold for, and how long they sat on the market. So renovations and updates, timing, and research. This all usually happens in a seller's mind well before they ever call an agent. And sometimes it might even be before they're even serious about selling. This process can go on for 6 months, for a year, before they ever list the house for sale. So really, really important. Now, I want to talk about two different scenarios here with you. And the two different scenarios I want to discuss are a cold launch versus preparation for a warm launch. And I really like this term cold launch that I started using because it just really explains what I'm talking about in the most simplest terms. So, two different scenarios. You could have two houses. Let's say they're even in the same neighborhood. One of them calls a realtor up on Monday. Photographer gets there on Wednesday. House is live on the market on Friday. That's what I would call a cold launch. So it means that they called the realtor, they put the sign out, they listed the house for sale, now the house is for sale. That's what I like to call a cold launch. Preparation, let's say another seller on the other hand, spends 30 days preparing. They're preparing mentally, they're preparing physically by doing stuff to the house. Now, this seller is implementing a 30-day strategy, and it's not going to be 30 days for every seller because it depends on what your specific situation is. And that's something that I will walk you through. I'm not telling you that we need 30 days to prepare, but the point is that you have a window of time before the house goes for sale, which may look different on every transaction. And this seller is preparing, and they're going to do what is called a warm launch. So they're positioning their house and getting it ready to go ahead of time, and also on my end, marketing, starting to get it in front of buyers. So the cold launch is essentially really not any window of time before being live on the market. Preparation and a warm launch it's all about that preparation window, and there's so many different aspects that go on during that preparation window, which we're going to get into a little bit more in detail. I go into detail on it a lot more in my other videos, but I just wanted to give you an example of two scenarios: cold launch versus warm launch, and how this sort of 30 days before your house goes on the market plays into that. Now, the next topic I want to discuss with you is decisions. Decisions that you make matter. And A lot of times it's actually the compounding effect of a series of small decisions that really make the largest impact and get you the best possible result. And this ties directly into what I talked about last week, which was here on my Upper Saucon Sellers postcard that recently went out. And that is what I call the 4Ps. And what are the 4Ps? It's pricing, positioning, presentation, and preparation. And I'm not going to go into detail on all of them right now because I did last week. So if you're interested in going into depth in all 4 of these categories, check out last week's video. It's very informative, very helpful. And these decisions that you make during these phases, pricing, positioning, presentation, preparation, directly affect the outcome of the sale of your house. So this is a really important concept. That's why I keep talking about it. That's why I print postcards and send it to you. Some people even hold on to these postcards as reference. There's also a QR code here where you can go straight to my website where I extensively talk about these topics and all different aspects of these topics through video, through blog articles, etc. So definitely important. Check that out. Check out my video from last week. And the next thing I want to talk to you about is actually misconceptions. So one of the biggest seller misconceptions is that selling actually starts when your house hits Zillow. So a lot of sellers think, okay, well now my house is live and now selling has started. Now we're going to try to get the house sold. But the truth is that the outcome is actually determined before your house goes live. And like I said, I know I talk about this topic a lot. I'm going to keep talking about it because that's how important it is. And quite honestly, I don't think there's enough emphasis on it. I don't think that enough people are talking about this window of time before the house goes for sale. And that's why I'm going to keep talking about it so heavily, because it really is not, it's not at the top of sellers' minds, and it is crucial. It's extremely important. And so a lot of sellers think, okay, my house is live, now we're going to sell it. The outcome was already determined. And what was the outcome determined by? It was determined by the series of small decisions that you made leading up to that launch, and it was determined by the 4Ps. So it's really important to keep that in mind. Now, another thing, when you're interviewing an agent, earlier conversations equal better outcomes. The number one goal is not to get a sign in front of your house. From my perspective, the number one goal is not to get you to sign a listing contract. I've said this before, and it's really important. A big differentiation factor that I have is that I do not view myself as a salesperson. That is not how I would describe myself. I am a hyper-local strategist and an advisor. So there's nothing wrong with having early conversations. Maybe you're not going to sell your house until next year. Maybe you're going to sell it in 6 months. Maybe you're not really sure that you want to sell it at all and you just want to sort of discuss it or talk about it. Knowledge is really important and education is really important. And having these early conversations and gathering information and learning is a really important first step to take, whether you plan on potentially making a move or not. So contact a local agent that you trust. Contact an agent that is going to be a strategist, and contact an agent that's really going to help guide you through that process, or just give you valuable information that you can use to make an informed decision. Because the truth is that for some homeowners, selling is the best way forward depending on what their goals are. And for other homeowners, sometimes selling is not the best option for them. Sometimes remaining in their home is the best option. And there are a lot of sellers that actually aren't 100% sure. I mean, homeowners that aren't 100% sure. Maybe they're thinking about it, they're not sure if it's the right move or not. And that's why it goes back to education and gathering information. Really, really important. Talk to an agent, have the early conversations, because the truth is, and I'm going to tell you the truth. If I really believe that your best bet, based on what the information you provide me, is to stay in your house, I'll tell you that. My goal is not to make a sale. Like I said, I'm not a salesperson. My goal is to help you, and it's to advise you, it's to strategize and say, okay, well, what is the best plan moving forward? So just keep that in mind. Earlier conversations equal better outcomes for the homeowner. But I want to expand on that and actually say education and knowledge equal better outcomes for the homeowner. And that's something that is lacking, unfortunately, a lot. I think that there's a lot of content that's very broad and regional, and that's fine. It's good to know what's going on in your region, but you need to know what's going on right here. What's going on in Upper Saucon Township, Center Valley, Coopersburg. What's going on? How does it affect me as a homeowner? And how can I gather information to make the best financial decision moving forward? So, like I said, selling a series of small decisions. The first 30 days before you list your house for sale is the most important. I say this all the time. I personally think that the pre-market window is arguably more important, or maybe you could argue it's just as important. I would argue it's actually more important than that window of time after you list your house. Of course, when you list your house, that first 7 days crucial, which I talk about also in my other videos. But this 30-day window, and it might not be a 30-day window, maybe it's a 60-day window, a 90-day window, where you're thinking about things, consuming resources, checking my website out, watching videos, learning. If that process goes on for 6 months, that's okay. That window of time before you actually put that for sale sign in your front yard is really important. But more importantly, that window of time will determine the outcome of the sale of your house. A lot of times sellers will list their house and maybe they might not get the outcome they wanted. And the question I always get is why? Well, why didn't this house sell? Why did this house have price reductions? Why did my neighbor's house get 6 offers and this house doesn't have any? I get asked that all the time. And there's a lot of detail that goes into that. It's not one simple thing. But if we're going to summarize it, I would say that window of time is what actually determines the outcome. What's entailed in that window of time? Everything that we discussed. Preparation, positioning, pricing, presentation. That all plays into that window of time. So it's really important if you're thinking about selling your house, even if you're not thinking about selling your house, but you own a home in Upper Saucon Township, it's really important to realize how crucial the window before you list your house is. And that's why I talked about this the last 2 weeks, I'm going to just mention it briefly again. Check out my Upper Saucon Seller's Guide. This has a lot of very useful information for homeowners in Upper Saucon. This is not a moving guide. It's not going to tell you about transferring your utilities over. It's not going to tell you about packing your boxes. That's information that could apply to any market across the whole country. This is information for Upper Saucon homeowners, what we are seeing in the market right now, and how it applies to you as a homeowner. And there's a lot of strategy in here. It's strategizing the way forward when you list your house. So check this out on my website, nickgsellspa.com. It's free. You could download it. You could look through it. I have hard copies if you want a hard copy. And feel free to call or text me anytime and to discuss any of this content. But the biggest takeaway from this video is that the period of time before you list your house for sale is just as, if not more important, than once your house actually goes live on the market.